everybody, welcome. I am Daniel G. Garza, and this is Put Together Conversations. Welcome to the show. I'm pretty excited. Today's show is one of my favorite topics. We're going to talk about a little bit about recovery and life. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my guest. Before I do that, I want to welcome everybody who's watching us on Facebook. Do me a favor, if you'd like to share this on your page so other folks can watch it. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you scroll down and hit that subscribe button and like the video for us, that would really help. If you're on LinkedIn, you can also share the video and make sure that your friends watch it. And all of our friends on Twitter, you can retweet the show so folks can join us. If you want to be part of the conversation, please do so. All you have to do is join in the video, make some comments, and be part of it. And we'd love to hear from you. Please join the conversation. Today's guest is Mr. Avery Nix. Why are my fingers all buttery today? There we go, Avery. Avery Nix is a person in long-term recovery. What that means to him is that he is a proud father to his 8-year-old daughter, 2-year-old son, and a loving fiancé who share similar visions in life together. He serves at several different capacities for his local community and state as a whole, but his heart and soul rests in advocating for adolescents in self-discovery and seeking long recovery. Avery finds himself advocating for high school athletes, especially that struggle with substance use disorder, mainly because he has been there himself. I think I can't speak English. It's a hard day today. In every times of recovery, he has helped pilot and launch peer recovery coaching in the emergency departments of Northeast Georgia Medical Center, working with the Georgia Council of Substance Abuse. As of late September 2018, he took position working with adolescents as the director of marketing and clinical outreach for Eagle Overlook Recovery for Adolescents. As of August 2020, Avery joined the Clear Fork Academy team as a national business development representative. He continues to have a vision to spread as much hope and awareness as possible for those in recovery or seeking recovery from substance use disorder and mental illness. Supporting them with the help they need is a priority. And as you can tell, I'm wearing one of my sober shirts today, so we're going to bring Avery on. Avery, sir, how you doing?
There we are. What is up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
I always like to confess when I make my own mistakes. So we had scheduled a while back, but life kind of got in the way, and I didn't send Avery a new link. So I was like, haha, find your way to the show, Avery. But I'm so glad you're here.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. It means a lot. Truly, any opportunity I can get to jump on and, share just any part of myself with anyone, it's huge. So thank you.
Thank you. Before we get into it, I was tracing back to when we first connected. My brain went kind of blank, but did we connect through light bulb?
I think so. I feel that way, man.
Were you one of the participants for the program they were launching, or did I just connect with you through them? Because I feel like I met you through light bulb, but if not, for those of you who are not familiar with light bulb, I will put some information out for you to check them out. They do a lot of really great work in cancer, transplants, and recovery. So go check them out. Lifebulb, LYLFBULB. So go check them out. But recovery, we have that in common. So that's one of a really important topic for me. You mentioned in the bio that you are in recovery. May I ask how long you've been in recovery?
Yeah, no. So I've been in recovery now, overall for close to 6-7 years. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
I appreciate it. It was 2014. I really started taking my recovery seriously, and kind of seeking abstinence from all drugs. And obviously my life was in shambles. So I had to start making some moves in a different direction. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I always joke about it. And when people say, like, did you start did you stop drinking and doing drugs because your life was bad? I'm like, no, my life was awesome. But I just said I needed a change. Yeah, I know. I
Right.
was kicking butt on drugs. So yeah, I'm like, I'm not gonna chit chat too much because I want to hear your story and I want folks to know everything that you do. So, Avery Nix, tell us how you put it together.
Yeah, no. Well, first off, folks, my name is Avery Nix. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means for me is really everything. I have centered my life around checking myself, taking inventory, right? Trusting God and helping others. I mean, that has been my MO since I learned, that is part of my solution in regards to staying sober every day. Well, I guess I'll just get started from the beginning. So I was born March 22nd, 1991. Definitely a millennial, definitely a product of the opioid epidemic. And I grew up in a real small town, North Georgia, just north of Atlanta, in a little town called Claremont. It's funny, I still live here. It's been interesting, my journey and how everything's kind of come full circle for me. It's been really incredible. But grew up with a dad, a mom, younger brother. My dad is a practicing alcoholic currently, and my mom, growing up, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Oh, wow.
And so, just to kind of paint the picture in regards to my childhood, as you could imagine, things were pretty chaotic. And let me tell you, first and foremost, I had everything that I needed, everything that I really wanted as far as Christmas and things like that. But there were some things that, I can remember being very up and down, as far as like the emotional torment, right? That kind of takes on someone, as we all know, adult childs of the alcoholics, and even living with someone with mental health disorders, right? That can cause its own stuff. So, everything was good. And what I mean by good is that, my folks and kind of our family unit, we fell victim to the belief that as long as our white picket fence looked good, as long as everything looked good on the outside, we didn't talk about dad's drinking or mom's mental health issues. We kind of kept everything close to our vest and made sure we didn't talk about the white elephant. Of course, as a young child, right, I immediately get resentful around what that kind of looks like, and just not having a voice in the matter, not being able to speak up and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. It was very much just kind of do your chores, do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. So I ran with that, because I was kind of forced to in that situation. Like I said, I still had everything I needed and everything I wanted. I mean, there was food on the table every day, and us four, the family unit, just kind of continued to move forward. And my first experience with substances, I was 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I was involved with sports. Of course, growing up, I was an athlete, and you got to think, this was 2003, so I'm still playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater on my PlayStation 1, and I could have swore I was going to be the next Tony Hawk. So I'm skating in my driveway, and I break my arm, and I broke my arm, and they rushed me to the hospital. I'd never broken anything before, so I didn't know what it was. I just knew it didn't feel good. And the doctor put a tourniquet around my arm and hit me with morphine to set my arm. And as soon as that medicine, right, when he released the tourniquet, as soon as that medicine released into my bloodstream, I realized pretty quick, and of course this is all hindsight, but looking back, I can remember the feeling, and that
Wow.
the feeling was, in my mind, it made the noise go away. That's what I took away from those 5 to 10 seconds before I passed out from the morphine. That's what I can bring that back, and I'll tell you a little part later on where I really drew the two as far as the drugs and how they connected into part of my solution, right? And I found something that really worked for me. So I was 12 years old. I'd grown up with a juvenile case of rheumatoid arthritis, kind of all in all this. And, I was constantly taking medications, right? It being an autoimmune disorder. When I would get sick and, my friends would get sick, right? I would stay sick for a little longer than my friends would. But they also put me on a real low dose of prednisone, which is an anti-inflammatory steroidal medication. And so I was on that like every day for years and years. But it was like the only thing that really kind of helped me in regards to the inflammation and stuff in my knee. And because team sports and being an athlete was so important, I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get cleared to play sports because of that rheumatoid arthritis. And so by the time right after the time I'd broken my arm, I had gotten a weight set for Christmas. And I can remember, looking down at my arm thinking, wow, especially when my cast got off, it was so much smaller than the other one. And so I told myself, because I didn't want to look silly, I told myself that I was just going to work out like crazy. And so the summer going into my 8th grade year, I started working out like crazy. And everything in my life at that time, between 12 and 14, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but for me, it was very much around how I appeared to all my peers. Being in school, it was very important for me to keep up with the Joneses. It's just part of what it was. And when I started working out and I'd gotten braces that summer, I came back to school. And, you kind of hear this a lot, especially in 12-step recovery, but you feel like you hear people say they had arrived,
Right.
That was very much my experience in the 8th grade. I kind of, capped into the mainstream of junior high school going into high school. And, I'd started working out a lot. I was filling out a good bit, hitting puberty, things were moving along. And being athletic, I wanted to get into football. And moving into the 9th grade, I finally got cleared to play football. And once I found that sport, I built my whole life around football and how I could get bigger, faster, stronger. You got to think, Danny, we were brought up that way. And even today in a society, it's all about how do we get bigger, faster, stronger every day. Even us in recovery, there's this pressure, it seems like, to be, the best version of ourselves every day, or this or that. And don't get me wrong, I'm scrolling through Instagram and I'll see a quote and be like, man, that's great. That blew me out of the water. But dude, not every day is a beautiful quote. And I've had to learn that now, being in recovery, that, I'm going to have down days and things aren't going to be the greatest just because I got sober. It's not a bed of roses all the time. So just during that time, just kind of paint that picture. Things are moving forward. I'm popular in school. I'm getting a lot of attention from women, right? And drug use started becoming a big piece of my story. And I'll tell you, I'd smoked weed for the first time when I was 13, and I got drunk for the first time when I was 14. And, the only reason why I did those things was because somebody had asked me that I looked up to and said, do you want to smoke weed? And I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great.
That was going to be my very first question. Let me just interrupt you for a second. For all of you watching, this is Putting Together Conversations. My guest today is Avery Nix, and we're talking about recovery, being young, and drugs. We have a comment. I'll make sure that I respect everybody's comments. So careful with these gamers. They'll break in and go through your things. I'm not a gamer, but I'm sure there are some of them that do. So, but that was going to be my first question. Let me just, because how does that, let me put this way. I'm really finding your story really interesting because I was not a young person. Okay, let me touch on a couple of things. I come from that line where alcohol was just part of the household. You just never questioned it. But it
Right.
did come with its issues. But as a Latino, I never really realized that there were alcoholics because, like, you just drank a beer, like everybody does it. So my goal in life as a kid was I want to get old enough, be happy, and drink a beer. So that was the association that you are only happy and relaxed when you're drinking. And that was like, as a kid, I was like, I'm so stressed, I want a beer. And then keeping up with people, especially like growing up as a gay man or a gay boy, like trying to keep up with the rest of the dudes and be a dude came with its own pressures. But can you walk us a little slower through that initial conversation of the first time? And I think this would be really interesting for parents now to hear the conversations, because it's not always about, hey kid, smoke this. There's a willingness to be part of it, correct?
Yes, very much so. My first introduction to that, I was with a friend of mine. It's funny, we're good friends today, both now sober on this side of things. You know, I can remember, I mean, it was just as simple as like, you know, a Saturday afternoon going over to his parents' house to hang out. They lived by the lake, and, you know, it was a whole thing. And we all played on the football team together. And it was me and another friend, and then this guy and his parent at his parents' house. And, you know, the conversation just kind of came up. I mean, he was, you know, of course, he was one of the kids that, like, you know, you kind of knew, right, that like he was into some things. And, but I was hanging out with him anyway because I looked up to him and he was cool. I mean, let's face it, he was just, in my mind, he seemed up here and I was down here. So it was as simple as us three boys getting together and him passing the bowl around. And I said, how do you do this? You know, I'm asking him the question. And, you know, he told me and I did it and I coughed my lungs out. And we
I feel because I'm remembering my first time. So yes,
I know, right? It's like, how did that go? But yeah, and it was as simple as that. And then the drinking piece, you know, fast forward a year later, you know, the drinking piece was New Year's Eve, and me and two other guys, different set of friends here. We were at a house party with their parents. So my parents weren't involved, but my two friends that I was with, it was their parents. And the two families came together at a house for New Year's Eve to celebrate. And so it's midnight, a lot of drinking going on. Us 14-year-old boys were just trying to stay up till midnight, hang out, have a good time. And things are starting to escalate. People are getting more drunk and so on and so forth. And so one of the moms slipped us champagne. And so we, you know, we're a glass in, 2 glasses in, 3 glasses in, and we're, you know, the mom's kind of hiding us and shielding us from the dads. And next thing you know, we're getting a buzz. And as things escalate on into the wee hours of the morning, you know, and this is where, like, you know, I think back to all those, like, you know, I grew up in public school, so, you know, the Just Say No, Red Ribbon Week, you know, all those campaigns were still alive and going, and still are today. But, you know, I had all the red flags, right, and was taught all the red flags around drinking, specifically, dad being an alcoholic and so on and so forth. And looking back at that experience that night, you know, by the end of it, I was passed out in the neighbor's front yard because I was so drunk, and it was 30 degrees outside. There was frost on the ground. I can remember waking up from a blackout thinking, it's a little cold out here, you know? And and making my way on into the house. But at that point, you would think that I would say, wow, that was kind of scary, like blacking out. My mind immediately was like, man, I must have had a good time. Let's figure out how we can do this later,
Yeah, because I want to clarify for people watching us, like, don't run into your children's bedroom right now and be like, hey, I say this honestly, I believe for many of us, there is this rite of passage. There's always going to be somebody in our group that has tried something, done something. There's always going to be that one mom that, like, hey, just have a sip, and then you kind of take advantage of it. But some of us are just wired to take it to that next level, and some kids don't. Because I remember smoking in high school, and not everybody that I hung out with smoked. And I was drinking when I was 15, and some of my friends just didn't drink. Even though some of us had tried it at the same time, I was an addict from the start. There was just all those like you talked about red tape. I mean, all red flags, like all the red tape for me to get to be an alcoholic as an adult were completely torn down. Like there were like free pass, Garza, go all the way through. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Like you don't take that sip of the beer and go, ooh, you're like, I can get used to this. Like, it's cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's it. And, that brings up the next question. It's like, I know for a lot of parents, it's like, well, what brings all this on? And then you start getting into the conversation around, well, is it environmental or is it hereditary, or, how much do genes play a part in this? And, someone's environment, it's crazy because to me, and I've heard, presenters that are way more educated than I am speak on this, but, a lot of them, it's just a collection of both. And sometimes, and I even had friends, man, he was adopted, never seen his biological family, grew up in a church going home. Everything was great as far as their family dynamic is concerned. Dad was a preacher, and, well, we all know the preacher father figure sometimes. but at least from the outside looking in, everything appeared to be okay. And his parents, the reason he was adopted is because they were both full-blown addicts. And so he had never met them in their life, but sure enough, he turns out to be exactly like them. So we know at that point, like that story describes, well, that was a genetic situation, right? Versus environmental. But then you have it on the other side too, where, the family doesn't drink, or I'm sorry, the family drinks all the time, and that one kid spared and isn't, actively in addiction. So
yeah, I don't think there's for folks. I mean, I guess reminding folks you're watching Put It Together Conversations. I am your host, Daniel G. Garza. My guest today is Mr. Avery Nix, and we're talking about recovery and addiction in young people, and we're kind of sharing our stories. So please, if you're watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, please join the conversation and ask any questions you might want to have. I've shared this, and I'm wearing my Solo-tober t-shirt today, just like everyone's now. When I get to share my story, I always tell them, like, it's a perfect storm of nurture and nature, and it's not like your kids are born and they're like, yeah, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and he's going to be an addict. Better be careful. Like, there's no marking that comes with it, because on the outside, folks knew me and they were like, he's a great kid. Like, he does nothing wrong. And I was. I mean, I totally had a lot of people fooled into I don't do anything. I'm great. But then you start putting in the perception that people have of your family and trying to keep that appearance. Then your own inside emotions, whether you feel inadequate. Are you tall enough? Are you smart enough? Are you butch enough? Whatever the case may be. And now those two things just start merging. And then at some point, at some point that seed that's inside of you is just going to start blooming, and it's like Little Shop of Horrors. Once you know, once that plant starts tasting that first drug, you got to keep feeding it. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. But here's the crazy thing about it all. Drugs and alcohol, like, substance wise, those things really just qualified me to really take a look at some of this stuff, right? Like growing up. And, to a certain degree, there was all sorts of things growing up that could have, really spawned and made this, as you said it, this seed just really kind of blossom. Whether that was, sugar or overeating or working out or, whatever it may be, there was so much that that is involved with recovery or working out or, whatever it may be.
Sorry.
So much that,
I'm trying to make sure that people can listen, and I press the wrong button. Technicalities, folks. That's like TV for you guys. So, at what there has to be a point where you were finally, as we talked in the very beginning, there's the point where you look in your life and you go, or did somebody else take a peek in your window and go, Avery, dude, gotta take care of this?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the first couple times there that I described that I really got high for the first time between smoking weed and drinking, I got caught both times by authority figures, parents, other parents, coaches, right? Coach found out. It was a whole thing. And, at that point, it was just I think a lot of folks were just kind of like, okay, rite of passage. They're young boys, no big deal. Grounding, let them have some consequences, and we'll just kind of move forward. And that's what happened. And honestly, things didn't start becoming regular as far as my use was concerned, until I was coming up on really the end of 14, early part of when I turned 15. And, at that point, I started hanging out with upperclassmen. So, your 10th, 11th, 12th graders. I was still in 9th grade at the time. The mentality, right, in my town, okay, and it's a Friday night kind of town, okay? So, the mentality was, well, let's work hard during the week and play hard on the weekends. And so, Friday and Saturday nights were, where's the party at and where's that going to be? Hanging out with upperclassmen, right? Friday night after football games, we're headed to that party. And so from the time, I would say between 15 and 17, Friday and Saturday night was every single weekend, unless something came up, but that was a priority. We're going to work hard, practice hard all week, have the game on Friday night, and then Friday night was going to be a blowout. Saturday night was going to be a blowout. And with that came a lot more, kind of broadened my inventory of drug use, if you want to call it that. It wasn't just smoking pot and drinking. It became, I think snorted cocaine for the first time, right? Oxycontin was huge. This is between 2005 and 2009. This is really when the pharmaceutical epidemic was getting up there. And then, of course, Xanax and Adderall and Vyvanse, I think, started coming out about that time. And so we were all just speedballing all weekend. I mean, it was just a normal thing. Things became habitual for me, as in the progression of my addiction it got to a place where my Friday nights and Saturday nights were no longer okay. I needed to have a Sunday night and then maybe a couple nights during the week. So that's really where my progression and it becoming more habitual really started taking off.
And we have a question on the board, and if you want to answer it now or hold on to it, but how do you create the trust with someone who has an addiction in getting the help treatment they need?
How do you create the trust with someone who has an addiction in getting help. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm hearing it in regards to, as far as helping a loved one or a friend get into treatment, how do you start that conversation into getting them facilitated into a program? Is that right? Did you
Yeah,
hear?
I'm guessing that they're asking, for instance, like you work a lot with the, as your bio said, you work a lot with younger adults,
Yeah.
teens, adolescents. How would, as an adult, how would you, or how do you now establish that trust? And because we all know, I mean, being in recovery, we know that unless I'm really honest with you about what I'm doing, that you can't give me the help that I actually need. Because I remember my time in rehab, I had to be completely honest about everything that I was doing to get the help that I was needing. Just to say I'm an addict, there's a stream of drugs that each one requires something different. Does that make sense? So I guess if I'm gonna, Dorian, thank you for asking the question. I'm going to kind of translate there. How would you, as an adult, establish that trust with somebody younger to get the information you need?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different things. I mean, like with adults and 18 and up, okay, like that trust and that conversation that needs to be had is a big one. There's a lot of resources out there, of course, in regards to like interventions, right? Even like for young adults that are in college or that are struggling, right? There's, you have therapeutic education consultants that specifically are geared towards, young people's education, and helping them as an umbrella of their mental health and substance use issues. With adults, that it's just a tough conversation to have. There's really no way around it. If you have a loved one that, to me, if you have a loved one that's struggling and it's the white elephant in the room and nobody's talking about it, and you feel like you're in a place where you're that you need to have that conversation with them because, let's face it, I mean, their life's at risk if they're getting high regularly. Then you need to have that conversation. It's just as simple as talking about it, right? Having your own boundaries around what you will allow and won't allow within your friendship or your relationship with that person. And a good tip that I learned was never enable someone's addiction, but enable their recovery process or their process getting into treatment. So yeah, I mean, ultimately it's just having that conversation. The trust really doesn't get, I mean, it hopefully is built to begin with. But yeah, just having the conversation and kind of seeing where that goes,
I think, and adding to what you're saying is, if you're close enough to the person to realize that they have a problem, then the trust is already there. It's just about taking that next step, is either allowing them to continue on the path they're on, which ultimately they're going to do it whether they want, I mean, whatever you say, or having that uncomfortable discussion going, hey, I need to talk to you about this. And it's how can I say this? It's not your responsibility how they accept the information. It's only your responsibility to acknowledge the fact, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I want to hear more about your story. I'm not sure because people started commenting. Which was better, Oxy or Coke? Well, it's not like a Pepsi or Coca-Cola type thing. Don't try either one of them, please. I mean, don't. We're not encouraging. We're not here promoting either one. So don't do either one. But if I had to say which one's more addictive or which one is easier, I've only done Coke. I never did Oxy, so I don't know. Do you have a comment on that? I'll let you answer any of that. Yeah.
I mean, other than yeah, addictive wise, I mean, cocaine definitely has a shorter half-life, right? So the need or the compulsion to move forward in that use happens more quickly with cocaine. I feel like my experience was like that. But Oxycontin is just as addictive for sure.
Yeah. So we're not here promoting addiction. Please don't go. Please don't shut us down or anything. We're here helping talk about recovery. So, and then Lauren, thank you. Yeah, great quote. Don't label their addiction, but their recovery. Yeah, definitely a good quote. And obviously, we tickled somebody there, so that's good. So we left the story. So you were getting caught a couple of times. There were a couple of consequences. Nothing at the level where like Avery, you've got a problem, but more of like, okay, that's. Do you believe that because it was a whole, like everybody was part of it, like people kind of like closed their eyes a little bit and said, okay, well, nobody's dead, so we're good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hard thing about it. Being even now, seeing a 13, 14-year-old, smoke weed for the first time or even drink for the first time, it's still very much like this is just their rite of passage, Um, for me, it's like, doesn't everybody experience that? But I see where there's a lot of people that don't as well. So there are two sides to that. Where I come from and my culture and how I grew up, it was, okay, Avery's just a teenager. Let's just keep moving forward and, kind of pray for the best,
Right. Because there's always somebody worse. Yeah, my kid drinks, but there's somebody. Look at the neighbor's kid. They're bad, but not my kid, kind of thing.
Yeah.
We have one more quick comment. Welcome to society. Boot no matter until it comes for your bosom. I think I know what you mean, but yes, it's always better. Like everybody else's problem. It's somebody else's issue. My kid is good. I got control over it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because we left the conversation kind of there. Like, at what point did you or somebody around you finally realize, like, Avery, we really got to tackle this?
I was 18.
Okay.
18 years old, going into 19. And at that point, man, I had managed to graduate high school, and kind of the way I was describing earlier, right? It was a work hard, play hard mentality during high school. So my Friday night, Saturday night party nights became a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday night, and then a couple days during the week. So by the time I was getting ready to graduate or even look into continuing my education, right, in college, my goal and aspiration or dream was to go play football in college. And I had an opportunity to, a couple different opportunities. And at that point, looking back, I can see where my addiction really had control over me, because all my ambitions and future goals really started kind of freaking me out. And what I mean by that is that I had lost, right? I had started trading the substance use and the drinking for my ambitions. Does that make sense? To go to college and to go do all those things. In fact, I was real comfortable being in my hometown, having access to, in my mind, what helped make me feel whole. So when I graduated high school, I had a lot of feelings of unworthiness, a lot of feelings of just being alone, right? All my friends and people that I looked up to, right, they were all moving on and going to college, and they seemed to have it all together. Meanwhile, I'm struggling with a substance use disorder that no one knows about. I'm keeping it all to myself. I really have no idea what next really looks like as far as school goes. So I did what I thought I should do, and I enrolled in a community college. I started working 2 jobs and just kind of kept moving forward. I didn't really know what else to do. Looking back now, it's I was doing everything I could to kind of cover up and get people to stop talking about me so I could just continue to get high. Summer of 2009, I started using intravenously. So anything that I could break down and get into my arm, I was going to do it. And, when I started moving into that world, things really started spiraling out of control for me. It was no longer fun anymore. In fact, I can remember waking up in the mornings, trying to make my way to the bathroom. And I was shaking uncontrollably to get to the bathroom, to get my next dose in so I could continue to live life. But everything was okay still, because the drugs and everything involved as far as my image, identity was somewhat protected still. So I was moving forward. You fast forward to February 2010. I was 155, 160 pounds. I was 190 when I graduated high school. So I lost a lot of weight. All the drugs had run out. It was a dry period of time. I had no idea what withdrawing looked like or detoxing looked like. I just knew that I woke up one morning and it was I think day 2 at that point, and I was really depressed. My face wouldn't stop twitching, and I had no motivation, no energy, fatigued. And I remember calling a buddy of mine and saying, "Dude, what is going on?" And he goes, "Dude, you never been through withdrawal before?" And I was like, "Guess not." He goes, "Yeah, man. We just got to figure out where we can get some more, and then we'll be all right." So I'm freaking out at this point. I'm 2 days in. I was really depressed. I felt like I needed a way out pretty quick, so I did what I thought was best, and I reached out for help. I called my dad and called my family, and they sent me to a local hospital, and they gave me a psych evaluation, and I was in a psych ward pretty much for 3 days to detox. Yeah, and it was interesting. Talk about things coming full circle. I was in the same place, man, that my mom was in and out of a couple times when she was struggling with the bipolar. And so here I am, man, 19 years old, 18 going on 19. I feel like I have lost everything. No goals, no future. I'm miserable. And, I had found a bottom, and I got introduced to 12-step recovery at the time. And I went to my first meeting straight out of detox. And the only reason why I went, well, a couple things. My pops went to the church that where the meeting was held, and I needed to figure out how to control it, And so, I got invited to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And, in my mind, and I had no clue what I was walking into, but I figured if that's a narcotics meeting, they're probably going to help me figure out how I can be normal, where I can start drinking on the weekends or just trying to be a kid again, right? As we know now, it was abstinence from all drugs, and alcohol is a drug. So,
was that in the pamphlet? I didn't read that in the application form. Well, what?
Yeah. So I figured that out pretty quick. And but one thing I took during that time of going to meetings and getting involved the way I did was, these people, man, as they were sharing in meetings, they were sharing what I was thinking in my mind in regards to topics or other people's stories. And that really blew me away. And as I started fellowshipping with folks and going out to eat and getting to know these people, it really hit home with me that they had found a way out and they were just like me. And that in itself was enough to completely screw up my using, right? when I went back out, and it wasn't, there's a lot of things I could say that I did wrong that I was the reason why I got high again. I mean, trust me, I wasn't, it wasn't a cookie cutter situation. I was picking up the tools that I wanted to use, that I felt comfortable with, and then moved on and went to the next meeting. So needless to say, I wasn't very teachable. I was just riding high on this initial burst of, abstinence and what that looked like. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've said for a lot of folks that I went to rehab with who were going through the first time, it was one of those like, look, Mom, no hands. Like, I got this. People are like, you're going to fall. You're going to fall. You're like, no. Yeah, I went to rehab, and God bless. And this June 21st will be 14 years since I left rehab, and since I went into rehab, and it's amazing. But yeah, for everybody watching, you pick up what your body, mind, and soul need in the meetings, but that's just the beginning. That's just like the foundation of creating who you are. Sometimes we build things very sturdy, and sometimes we don't, and it's going to collapse. But you learn from the collapses, so don't give up. Anybody out there is watching. So we're 15 minutes to the end of the show. I want to make sure that remind everybody that's watching. This is Put It Together Conversations. Thank you for joining us either on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Join the conversation. We still have a little bit to go. My guest today is recovery expert, Mr. Avery Nix. And I want to make sure that I put up before we forget. This is the link that I found to, is that correct? So that people can get in touch. Now, one of the things that we do here on the show is share some words of wisdom. So, Mr. Avery Nix, what words of wisdom would you like to share with the audience?
I think for me, when I think about addiction recovery, and I think about what living life in recovery looks like, and if I were to share anything, it would just be not to give up on yourself. I think it is so easy to get caught up in, well, I got high today, so I might as well just say screw it and, just go all the way in. I think for a lot of us, especially for ones that we've been sober for a little while, I think it's so easy to fall victim to the belief that once I've picked up, I have lost control. If I'm still very much in my bubble, right, of recovery, or I'm very much in, still involved to some degree, you haven't lost what you have gained so far in life, and you still have every opportunity to pick yourself back up and continue to do the work, And the reality is this is a noble path, and it's not for everybody. Getting sober and maintaining sobriety on a regular basis is not something to joke around about. It's not something to take for granted, because it is a grind,
Yep.
I think for people like me and Daniel, I can't speak for you necessarily, but I could imagine if you're anything like me, a lot of this stuff has become, more of an autopilot situation. It's become second nature, taking inventory, analyzing the hell out of myself, reaching out to people, 4 or 5 times a week. I mean, to me, it's not a job or a chore anymore. It's just become a way of life.
Yep.
Keep working it until it becomes a way of life, and it will get so much easier. It really will. So that's what I have, Daniel.
Awesome. Yeah, because there was a part you were talking about earlier. I remember I went into rehab on a Wednesday, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday. Look at the calendar. But the day before I was supposed to go to rehab, I threw a farewell party at the bar that I used to go to. Yeah, I was like, because I went in for addiction. I was a cokehead and a crackhead, and I really believed that that was the issue because there are, in my brain at that age, I was like, there's no alcoholics in Latinos. Latinos are not alcoholics. What are you talking about? We party. Like, it's not my fault that you can't hang the way that I can hang. Like, that's your problem, not mine. So
Yeah.
the day before going to rehab, I was at the bar that I would go to, and I threw a party. I bought shots and drinks for everybody, and I said, I'll see you guys in 3 months when I'm out of rehab. And there was a gentleman there who it was a country bar that went there for the music. He wasn't a drinker, and it took me a long time to remember this, but he looked at me and said, "You're not coming back, and if you do, you're not going to be the same person." And I was like, what do you know? Whatever, dude. And I in my head, I went into rehab for addiction. I was there because of the coke and the crack, not for the alcohol. But I walked out 3 months later, and I was like, wow, like. But I think what worked for me, and everybody's different, folks. But what worked for me was I was just too tired of being a mess. I was just exhausted of looking over my shoulder, not for anybody in particular, but for those demons that I had carrying around. Does that make sense? Like, I was
Yeah.
just exhausted of feeling exhausted all the time. And I was like, I can't keep living this way. And God bless, like I said, and I say God bless because I was raised with God, and that's my belief. So whatever you believe, folks out there. But recovery, I mean, Bay Area Recovery Center out in Dickinson, Texas. Hello, folks. Like, you folks broke me down and helped me build up again. But even though I didn't acknowledge it when I was younger, as you're telling your story, I'm like, yeah, I remember hiding my drinking when I was 15 years old and 16. And, I would do high school in Mexico, and we would go out to the lake and get drunk and then sneak into the house and go straight to bed because I didn't want them to know that I was, you know, drunk off my ass. So, if there's a parent out there listening, because you work with a lot of young people, there's a parent out there, and are there any true tell signs that they can look for to make sure that their kids are not involved in alcohol or drug abuse?
Yeah. Most kids are in school. So, usually one of the first signs of any slipping is in their grades. That's usually a big one. Their motivation or lack thereof towards any sports that they're engaged in. That's another big, kind of red flag. Their relationships with their peers, have they changed? Are they hanging out with people that don't seem to be, as good, or maybe not doing the right things as much? Just things like that. Are you catching them in lies? Like, are they becoming dishonest? I would keep it very practical in regards to what you're searching for as a parent, and check in on little nuances like that. Are they being dishonest? Are their grades slipping? Are they uninterested in sports or uninterested in their friends? Are they isolating? Are they sleeping a lot? More so than a teenager does. Trust me, I know they need 12 hours at least. Yeah, things like that for sure.
That's pretty cool. Thank you so much. We're almost running out of time. We have about 5 more minutes to go. I so appreciate your honesty and openness to share your story. I'm sure people watching. I always see conversations like this when I'm able to have somebody who's in recovery. It's a meeting per se. It's a sharing moment. You get to share your story, and as we know, whenever you share your story, there's always somebody out there that's going to see the mirror in front of them and go,
Yes.
"Oh wow, I've been through that." Anything about your personal journey that you'd like to share before we go?
So I was unemployable at one point in my life. I had nowhere to live. I had nothing to add to a relationship as far as value is concerned. So I had no one in my life that really that I cared about or they cared for me about. At least I didn't think so. Today I have a beautiful family. I wish I could show pictures. I always like want to whip out my phone, like here, take a look at my family. But man, I have a beautiful fiance. In fact, just so y'all know, Lauren, who's been commenting, that's my fiance.
Oh, well, hello, Lauren. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Man, she has been awesome. I'm so blessed to have her in my life, and we have two beautiful children. Charlie, she is my daughter. She's 8 years old, and then my son Mason, who's 2. And we're just doing life, man, the best we can, and learning each and every day. Life is good. I was telling somebody the other day, when you're complaining about the golf course that you're playing on a Tuesday morning, things are pretty good. So that's just kind of where I'm at, and I couldn't have done it without people in my life today. Being surrounded by people in recovery and being surrounded by my family that is super supportive, and as I am super supportive of them, and it's always staying involved, man. Whatever I can do to be of service, right? That's kind of the goal. So
I changed golf course for Laguna Beach beaches because I live in Laguna Beach, and to be able to get up and go grab a cup of coffee, go down to the to the boardwalk, and sit and watch just nature and the people. It's you can't but want to wake up to that the next day. And thank you for sharing your experience and advocacy, continued support, and thank you, Dorian, for watching the show. We're so appreciative of you guys for joining. Yeah, after a while, and there's something I want to add to what you said earlier. There was a moment after cancer for me. I think that was a big moment post-cancer when I was alive and I can walk, and I can work, and I can do stuff like this. And when recovery, I noticed that recovery was just part of life. It's just what I do. I don't have to think about it anymore. And for those of you out there watching, if you are struggling with alcoholism or addiction, know that there is help out there, and you can reach out, and somebody will understand you. Reach out to us. There's no judgment. We're not going to turn you away. We will make sure that you find the help you can. I'm going to put the link again for anybody who has young folks in their life who also might have problems with addiction or recovery and want to get into recovery. Please reach out to somebody. You're not alone. You're in the tunnel in the dark, yes, but you're not alone. A lot of us have been through it, and I can't promise you that things are going to get better for you because you have to work it yourself. But I guarantee you that if you put as much effort into being clean as you do in being high, that things will change for you. I can guarantee you. Things do get better. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes some struggle. It takes a little bit of a detox, but it's going to happen. Any last words before we go, Avery?
Man, I hope everybody stays blessed. Continue to move forward. Dana, really, really grateful, man, for you and asking me to be on the show. It means a lot. It really does.
Well, thank you. I hope it's not the last time. I feel like there's so much more conversation we're going to get into.
Yeah.
But don't go away. Let me just say goodbye to everybody. I'm going to put you in the green room for a second. For everybody watching, thank you. This has been Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. My guest today was Avery Nix. Make sure you go check them out. The information, as usual, will be in the description. So go find the information and get in touch if you need anything. If you are looking to get clean and sober and you don't know who to talk to, reach out to us here at Little Mexican Productions, and we'll make sure to guide you in the best direction we possibly can. We want to thank all the folks watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Make sure that you like our show, share our show, and join the conversation next time. We're here every Saturday at 12 and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Today was a special edition 2 o'clock show. But join us every Saturday. Every Wednesday, we have the Christian and Daniel show at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Fridays, we have the Card Devo Show at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So make sure you mark your calendars and join us on the shows. For now, I want to thank you guys on behalf of Little Mixer Productions. Keep it together. Bye. I lost the video. This is live shows, folks.